Now I'm going to start this video with a disclaimer. This video does go out into the public domain. We know what people can be like, but I want to set out the purpose of this video and where it's actually coming from. Many of my followers or people that watch this channel will know I recently completed the Seville Marathon, and if you followed that journey, you will know that I trained pretty damn hard for it. I had a fair amount of time to try and achieve a goal that I set out for myself. I wanted to share with you my thoughts on what made me go from a 3:53 marathon to a 3:29 and why I think I could still go faster. Now, I'm not a coach, but I work with a coach and I have a lot of thanks to him in getting me in that shape to be able to run the kind of time that I wanted to do. And that was, coming off of the back of my triathlon season with a pretty annoying hamstring injury which was ongoing for a considerable amount of time. And yes, there are probably hundreds of videos that you can watch or articles you can read out there about this kind of things, but this is from my perspective, and I do believe that if you want to go a little bit better or a little bit quicker, then some of these general rules in which I applied in my own training would certainly work for you. Now, these are not in any particular order, but I do think some are a little bit more important than others. Now, consistency trumps a lot of things in my opinion, and you have to regularly run. Regular running is key. If you think the body has so many parts to it, and if you're trying to run something like a marathon, then you're going to need to prime it for the onslaught of what's coming. Marathons are big deals. Anything from a half marathon up, I think, are quite big deals on your body, and if you want your body to perform, then you've got to prime it and get it ready for that. The tendons, the fascia, the muscles, all in your legs, they need time to adjust to that load, and that's why you've got to take your time building up. Little and often is much more preferable, I think, than trying to do long and hard, and maybe not doing it so often. I think if you're consistent in your approach and you give your time for your body to adapt, then I think you've probably taken one of the biggest steps to achieving any goal that you're setting out for yourself. Now, I'm going to use myself for an example here. I never actually run, I don't think, more than 40 miles a week during that time. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, I was obviously coming back from injury, and I needed to manage that quite carefully. And secondly, if you think about my body and my history, 90% of my injuries are running related, so there had to be some sort of thought process into how I was going to manage my body, and most people don't kind of tend to do that. So to show you don't have to do massive mileage, but you've got to make all your runs count. So the second point is about being realistic with your goals. You have to look at what your current fitness levels are, what your current aerobic background is, and I suppose really how active you already are. First-time marathoners might have just the goal of getting around, or there might be some who have a specific time goal, like for example getting around in under 4 hours. So whatever you do, just be realistic with your goals, and you might look at mine and think, well, actually you've gone 3:53 to 3:30, that's a 23-minute PB, that's quite a big jump. It is, but there was a story behind that. I didn't have the best preparation for my first marathon. I was injured for 8 weeks in a build up to it, which hampered it, and I knew I could run quicker, so I thought 3:30 was a realistic goal. Now, if I'd have said something like 3:15, 3 hours, I think, yeah, I'm probably pushing it a bit too much there, and that is where you get into the realms where this is just not going to happen. It's unrealistic. Now, by taking a baseline, that is certainly going to help you to determine what kind of goal you could put in place. Now, by carrying out a baseline, what I suppose I mean is doing some sort of run fitness test. And the idea of that is to give you your current fitness levels, and it will tell you, your current pace zones, also your current heart rate zones. Now, this is one I feel is often missed by lots of runners, and I think if you can do this, it's going to inform your training and therefore it's going to make the training program that you put together or your plan a lot more informed. And I'm not going to lie, it does take a little bit of understanding, but trust me, it isn't hard to do. You know, go out, run pretty hard for 30 minutes is pretty much what you have to do. Obviously you don't want to go out and sprint it and blow up, that kind of thing, but you're going as hard as you can to sustain for that 30 minutes. Use a heart rate monitor of some kind. Don't use these things, the ones on the watches, they're absolute rubbish in my opinion. I always use a heart rate strap on my chest, or the ones on your arms are pretty good as well. But if you do that, you're going to give yourself some really useful, insightful data that you can use to inform that training that you're going to try and put together. You're also going to understand exactly what your current fitness levels are and what you're going to need to do to build that up. So we've got a baseline, we've got some data. Now what? Now, many runners out there will tend to use plans that you can find off the internet or through books and that kind of thing. And to be honest, they do serve a purpose. They will definitely probably get you around, but they just can't offer that informed, specific approach for you. They're just too general in my opinion. And if any runner wants to get better, I think you do have to spend some time in educating yourself in the kind of things that you need to do and the runs that you need to take on. Now, if you spent some time educating yourself and understanding what types of runs you needed to do, that's where the data comes in, because if you can understand what a tempo run is and you know what your tempo pace is or your tempo heart rate, then actually that's where you're using your data that you've collected to inform that training. Now trust me, it really isn't that hard. It just takes a little bit of reading and understanding, and I've helped people in the past to do that. It really is simple to do. And if you're like me, you know, you've got limitations on time and mileage, then you really do have to make every mile and every run count. No junk miles. Going out knowing the purpose of every run and what to do in that particular session is not only going to train your body, but it's also going to train your mind. Now, if you want to run a specific time, then you've got to do some training in those specific zones or paces to get your body accustomed and adapted to it. Now, if you can and you do have the time, do try and supplement your training. And as a triathlete, I think that's probably one of the added bonuses I have, in that, you know, I'm not just running, I've got the added swim and the bike workouts, which give me that little bit of extra cardiovascular workout. Now, when you're in a major run block, as I was in the build up to Seville, you do have to prioritize your running, so you'll probably do a little bit more than you would of the other workouts, but there is certainly no harm in supplementing your training. It's good for the body as well. You know, you're taking the stress off of those joints, those ligaments, those fascia, all the, you know, like we mentioned earlier on. So I think a little bit of biking or swimming or whatever you can do will certainly help supplement any training that you're doing. I think this point goes without saying, you know, that if we don't eat well and we don't recover well, then we're not going to get out of our body what we actually need. So we need to look after it, we need to fuel it properly along the way through any training period. I would also add, you know, don't overthink this one. I think just keep it simple. Eating a balanced diet is good enough for me, and that's kind of what I try and stick with. I think we do need to limit things if we know we consume too much of it. Now, I'm always partial to a biscuit in the evening. I do like one, but in the build up to the marathon, I knocked some of that on the head. I didn't do it every night. I did still keep, you know, at the weekend have a treat and that kind of thing. So you got to be realistic with it. I think sometimes trying to eradicate everything for a long portion of time isn't a sustainable thing long term. And along with this, I think you've got to try and look after your body, your legs in particular. And the other thing that I learned, looking after your feet. You don't kind of think this at first, but I was certainly giving myself massages every 2 or 3 nights, just on my legs with some oil and that kind of thing. It sounds daft, but I think it helped. And I was also really trying to look after my feet, changing my shoes, my socks, making sure that when I run, I was greasing my feet because I did have some blisters and things that I had to deal with. So you do have to look after, and I think anything that you can do, a regular stretching program, which was what I was using as well, will really help in recovering and you know, looking after your body. And lastly, I think we need to monitor how we're doing. And when I say monitor, there's lots of things we can monitor, but certainly things like, you know, listing out for your body, listing out for any, are there any niggles, are there any little things going on that you can work on, that you can iron out? Do you need to get onto your strength and conditioning programs, your stretching programs? They're the kind of things I think you always need to look at and listen to your body along the way. And even thinking about your equipment, or, you know, in this case, your trainers that you run in, are they up to scratch? Do you need new ones? I certainly found that, particularly when I was trying to look after my feet, that rotating between trainers certainly helped me. So for longer runs, I'd use one particular pair. For shorter runs, I'd have another one. Although they're the same brand, I found that this was quite beneficial for me. And when we come to monitoring, you've got to monitor your progress that you're making along your training. You've done all that baselining prior to it, so we can use that to help us monitor how we're getting on. Now, one example here is that when I started back running properly after my hamstring issues, I'd lost a considerable amount of run aerobic fitness. And in this case, I was running somewhere like 5:45 a kilometer for an aerobic heart rate. Now at the end of my run block, just before the marathon, I was running something like 5:10 a kilometer. So it just shows you how fitter I've got, and my body and my heart is not actually working any harder, but I'm actually able to run a fair amount quicker. So with me just being in tune with my body, I could monitor my own progress, and I could see my fitness growing as I got closer to the marathon. And my marathon pace of 4:58 to run sub 3:30 would have seemed a hell of a long way off and quite hard at the start of my block, but as my fitness grew, you know, from 5:10 to 5 minutes isn't that much of a difference, and an increase in effort. So you got to build to it, and if you monitor yourself, you can see your progress as you move through any training program. Okay guys, I've probably rambled on quite enough, and I've tried to cram a lot into this video, and no doubt I've missed some, so you can drop your comments in the comments box below. I'll be glad to hear them, and I'm sure they're all going to be really worthy. Like I said before, this is by no means a be-all and end-all, and I don't know everything about running, but these are just some general thoughts in which I've learned over my last 4 or 5 months of training and getting to the point that I am now. I'm hoping to carry that on this season. I'm probably going to look at another marathon, I think, towards the end of the year as well, because I do believe I can get quicker, and that's now sort of lit a little spark in me in thinking, well, how much or how quicker can I get? So we'll have to stay tuned for that one. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, do hit me a like. I would appreciate that. And if you're new around here, hit the sub button, and I will see you again all very soon.